Well, it is now time for Week 5 of the 2019 DCFL season. When we last left off, it was Week 4. As you can see in the standings in the Eastern Conference, New York still leads undefeated, followed by my Charms second 3-1, and then Charlotte 2-2, followed by Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Jacksonville. And in the Western Conference, Indianapolis continues to lead with Oakland second and Chicago third, followed by Phoenix, Seattle, and LA, as Indianapolis and New York still remain undefeated, but Jacksonville still remains winless. So we begin Week 5 with, of course, all division matchups, as we start off with Baltimore at Pittsburgh, as my Charm have now won 3 in a row, and looking really dominant as trying to keep that win streak going, as the Pittsburgh Power have lost 2 in a row in quite ugly fashion, as those 2 overtime wins to start the year are starting to show that maybe this team is not meant to be what it was last year. And my Charm won it 34-27 as we dominated defensively, forced 2 fumbles, and got 2 scores off of it. And that turned out to be the deciding factor as Pittsburgh tried to make the comeback but fell short, as they now lost 3 in a row, as my Charm have now won 4 in a row and still trying to hope Anthony's team would lose a game so we could be tied in the division. Then after that, it's the Charlotte Bobcats visiting the Philadelphia Sonics, as Charlotte struggling but keeping up in that division at 2-2. Meanwhile, Philadelphia has now lost 2 in a row in ugly games after starting off the year looking somewhat okay despite their terrible defense, as they need a win here to keep up in that division. And they choked again as Charlotte won it 44-24, as once again Philadelphia couldn't even get 300 yards of offense, as Charlotte put up almost 500 yards of offense. Maybe that's why you shouldn't have done all those trades. As Charlotte now the 3-2 and still in the playoff race, as Philadelphia's now lost 3 in a row. All their losses in the division too, so that's going to really hurt them when it comes to the playoffs seeds if they ever do somehow make the playoffs or get close to it. And then we finish off the Eastern Conference with the most lopsided game of the year so far, as the New York Gangsters visit the Jacksonville Scouts, as New York still remains undefeated with an elite defense. Meanwhile, nothing's going right for Jacksonville. They're suffering a massive hangover. They now lost 4 in a row, the only team with a losing record, but could they play spoiler against New York today? But nope, as New York got 38-24 as they dominated throughout the entire game. Even though Jacksonville put up almost 100 yards more than New York, it didn't matter, as they just could not keep up with New York, as they are now 5-0, almost on the verge of matching their win total from last year. Meanwhile, Jacksonville has already matched their loss total from last year. My God, what a terrible season it's been so far, as they still remain winless. After that, we go over to the Western Conference, as it's the Indianapolis Rapid Stallions visiting the Seattle Tenyo, as Indianapolis still remains themselves undefeated after making that comeback victory against Jacksonville last week. Meanwhile, Seattle dominated Pittsburgh last time out, so Seattle set themselves up to possibly be spoiler, as Indianapolis hasn't been dominating the last few weeks. And remember, Seattle gave Indianapolis their first loss last year. Could they do it again? No, they wouldn't, as Indianapolis dominated 45-13. Once again, putting up almost 400 yards. Seattle, after having 2 solid offensive production weeks, could not get up to 300 yards like they've done the last 2 weeks. Although their defense actually did a very good job in the first quarter shutting down Indianapolis, but they just could not keep up in the end. Indianapolis' offense overpowered them, and their offense lackluster as always. Then we get to an all-Matthews showdown, as his teams, the Oakland Pillagers and the Phoenix Devils, are going at, as Oakland already matched their win total from last year with a really good defense coming into town to face Phoenix, who's struggling. They've already lost 3 in a row and look like they're done for already, but could a game at home against the worst team last year, maybe that could make it turn it around for them and get them back into contention. And Phoenix would get it 35-26 as they just outplayed Oakland, put up almost 400 yards. They still couldn't get the offensive production as they normally did, and their defense out of nowhere outplayed Oakland. 2 sacks, an interception, 4 forced fumbles, recovering one of them. Man, they dominated today as they finally ended their 3-game winning streak, ending Oakland's 2-game winning streak, as they're getting right back into contention now in that division. And then we finally finish off the week with the LA Mean Green Machines visiting the Chicago Staleys, as LA finally got their first win of the year against the fellow expansion Philadelphia, as Chicago Had a tough loss last week against New York, but still fighting on, playing a lot better right now as they're trying to get over 500 again to remain ahead of Phoenix in that division. And Chicago dominated LA, shut them down completely until the final few minutes of the game when they got that last remaining touchdown for Mercy, as Chicago absolutely dominant, 29-0 at one point, put up over 400 yards, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery, completely outplayed LA. Jeez, LA last week had almost 500 yards of offense. They couldn't even get 230 yards today as they were shut down completely, as Chicago once again is back over 500. And with that, week 5 is now in the books as we take a look at the standings now. As you can see, still the same thing pretty much. In the Eastern Conference, New York still remains undefeated, leading the division, followed by my Charms second, and then Charlotte third, as Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Sonic are the teams leaving out in the playoffs. And then in the Western Conference, Indianapolis still remains undefeated, leading the division, with Oakland right behind second seed, and then Chicago with the third seed, with Phoenix, Seattle, and LA leading the way at the bottom of the division. And now we take a look at the week 6 schedule, as we'll start off with Seattle at Baltimore, Jacksonville at Charlotte, then Jacksonville at LA, and then Oakland at New York, that could be big, and then Pittsburgh at Chicago, and then finally Philadelphia at Indianapolis. Well, that's it for week 5. Tune in next time for week 6 of the 2019 DCFL season, as this season's getting very, very interesting. Can't wait to see what happens the next week.